Welcome to Unraveled Game Thoughts, and I am going to move over to the page I'm looking for here. This is my 2024 top 100, or at least the beginning of my top 100 video series. I will start with numbers 100 through 91, kind of go backward through the games that I have currently have in my top 100 games. I've done this for a couple of years now, and probably will need to go and at some point this season do a top games from 2024, but I'm trying to wait as late into 2024 as I can before I do that video, so we can get as many games that are going to be added this year as possible. Every year my top 100 changes because I get to play games that maybe I'd only played once or twice before, and I get more plays of those games to the table, get to try them out. If they add games to BGA, I will get to play them more on BGA, and that usually allows me to play a lot of games a lot more frequently than I normally would get to, because getting it to the table with a group of people, particularly family, which won't play a lot of my games, and getting to actually get through an entire game is a lot harder physically than it is on BGA, where I can kind of do a turn-based sort of thing and get to play some of those many times. Terraforming Mars, I think, was added to BGA this year, and I have now gotten to play that a multitude of times that I normally would not get to, because it's just that much harder to get to the table with people physically. And a lot of it is there's so many games coming out all the time that there's just a constant plethora of new games and new things to play. If I go to a friend's house, it's often playing something new and shiny that has just come out. And so a lot of those games that are really good games stay at the top of my list, but they just don't get played as much. It takes time to often figure out kind of where a game's going to land, and then I'm kind of at a point now where things don't shift around a ton. Maybe on the bottom of the list, in the, I'd say the 70 to 100 range, things shift a little bit more than they used to. That being said, how do I decide how I rank games? So I use what I would say is an exacerbated version of BGG's ranking. And I don't have it up on the screen now. I know I have it somewhere where it's kind of like how they would classify a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, and so forth up to 10. So I take that and then I kind of expound on it and add definition to each of those numbers for myself. And a lot of it's based on how much I want to play a game, or how frequently I would want to play a game. It's not necessarily how much I do play a game, because there are just certain games that I love to play and would play way more often, but I just can't because they're harder to get to the table, they require more players, or whatever the situation is. Maybe it's a game that my family just does not like. And so, without further ado, let's start in the top 100. Since we're doing 100, I'm not going to do runner-ups. There are runner-ups, but I'm not going to talk about those. I'm going to start with number 100, which is Unfathomable. Now, this is produced by Fantasy Flight Games and some other publishers, and the designer is Tony Fonchi and Corey Konechska. I'm probably going to not get names 100% correct, but Unfathomable is essentially, if you're familiar with Battlestar Galactica, this is a reskin of Battlestar Galactica. Just recently got to play Battlestar Galactica, and that's how I know that this was a reskin of that. As soon as I started reading the rules of that, I'm like, oh, this is Unfathomable. But Unfathomable is, I would say, a lot better. And I kind of wondered if Battlestar Galactica is by the same, looks like Corey Konechska produced that one. So this guy had somebody else helping him with it. But this is a co-op game, and you start as, depending on how many players, you need 3 at least, up to 6. I would say it's much better with 6. It says best at 5 on BGG here, but I don't know that I agree with that. I think 6, because having more players is just more fun to me. And you're each going to get a hidden role. Now, I think with 6 players, guaranteed at least one person is going to have the role of, what is the name of it? I can't remember. Basically, there's sea creatures that are coming up on this boat, and if you're the collective players are trying to get the boat to an island or to a place, to their destination. Their destination, we'll say a generic destination. And that's kind of how the players who aren't in league with the sea creatures win the game. If you are one of the hidden roles, you're like helping the sea creatures, then you're no one's going to know that that's what you're doing. But there are some various points in the game where you can kind of like mess stuff up in ways that people may not realize what you're doing. So say you're the captain and you make choices, you get 2 cards. No one sees the 2 cards you make choices from at certain points in the game. You could always pick the worst one, but you could play it off like, that was the best choice I had. And no one would know the difference. Now, people might start suspecting after a while. And if you suspect somebody is a traitor, then you can put them in the brig, or you could do some things like that. So as the game goes along, people start to get a little suspicious. Maybe that person's a traitor, maybe that person's a traitor. And at one point in the game, at least a second person could be revealed as a traitor, or not revealed, but like become a traitor if there are not already 2 traitors in the game. That could be up to 2, I believe. I think there's some kind of third one that I've never played with before that could be a factor, but you just play the game. And the reason this makes my top 100, because it's not the kind of game that is my social deduction games are not really my favorite type of game. But I appreciate the fact that every time I've played this game, even though it's never been like, oh, that's the game I really want to play, I have really enjoyed the experience. We have a great time. It's always fun to see who that traitor ends up being. And they can go most of the game without revealing themselves, but when the traitor reveals themselves, then they get some different powers and abilities. And the nature of how they take their turns becomes a little bit different. The game is not very hard to play as far as what you do from turn to turn. It flows very smoothly. Once you get a few turns in, you kind of like, oh, I kind of see how this goes, and you just move around and do the different things. The ship can get damaged. It's very hard to win if you're not a traitor. Both games I played, the traitors and the sea creatures won, and if you're the people on the boat trying to get the boat to your destination, it's just, once you have traitors revealed and you're kind of dealing with these sea creatures and you're dealing with the traitors, it's just so hard. Now, I like it better than Battlestar Galactica because Battlestar Galactica felt a little bit more choppy, and when I played that one, it was much swingier in how things happened. I ended up being a traitor in that game, and at some point in the game, we reached a point where it just felt like we were taking turns, and it was like, okay, is this game going to end? Is this game going to end? Is this game going to end? And it just kept going on, and like, it was a matter of like just needing, it was one point, there was like 4, I mean, there's all these different like food, food, fuel, there's different aspects that the humans have to manage. There's like 5 resources, and if any one of them goes down to 0, they lose the game. So in Battlestar Galactica, we had like 4 of them down to 1, and they just kept getting lucky in card draws. This is over the course of like, I don't know, probably 3 rounds and multiple turns. It was like anybody's turn they could have lost, but somehow they just strung together this long series of luck, and it kind of came down to the last turn, and then the traitors won in Battlestar Galactica. But it felt like it just drug on because you kind of knew the traitors are probably going to win. It's only a matter of time, and it wasn't like a skill-based sort of thing that led them to that, where they lost the game because they just had, took a bad turn or did something wrong. It was more of They just, they got lucky, really, really lucky for a long time, and then finally drew the card that was not going to help them. And most of the cards were probably not going to help them. They just happened to get a string of several that did. Unfathomable feels less swingy, and it's still very hard, and you're still relying on some luck, but it feels like you have a little bit more control over, a little more agency over what you're doing. It's a blast to play. If you like co-op games, if you like social deduction, this will be a hit for anybody who really loves those games. Honestly, I think if I was someone who really liked social deduction games more, this is probably going to be much higher on my list, probably in the 50 to 40 range if I was thinking about it. So, but it is a great game, a lot of fun. If I thought my family really loved it, this is one I'd probably put on my shelf because I would enjoy playing it, but we don't have anybody that really cares enough about social deduction, so I don't worry about it too much. But that's number 100, Unfathomable. Moving right along, Call to Adventure. Let me bring this up on the screen here, and there are quite a few. This came out in 2019. This is from Brotherwise Games, or at least the one I have is from Brotherwise Games. And there are a couple other publishers. The designers, Johnny O'Neill and Chris O'Neill. Base game is great, but the expansions do add some benefit. And if I go down here and where do they have expansions? I think I only have 2 expansions to this game. There are more. It only has 3. That does not seem right. So the Name of the Wind is the expansion that's based on the Patrick Rothfuss Kingkiller Chronicles, which is a fantastic book, but he's not completed it, and I just saw today that the next book isn't due to come out till 2028, so we got a long time to wait. I'm shocked they don't have the others on here. This does not seem right. So let's see. Maybe it's under versions. No, that doesn't look right. That is very interesting. I did not look this up beforehand. I just assumed it would come up under expansions. But there is also the Stormlight Chronicles, and I may have, let's see, Call to Adventure. Let's see what comes up here. So the Stormlight Archives is based on Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Chronicles series, and so it adds a few different powers in there. Then there is the Name of the Wind, and that one is again based on the other book. There's another one that's like I assume it's released. It was almost based on D&D. I think it's Epic Origins. Yeah, it's based on D&D, and it's got a little bit more of a co-op feel to it, and it's good. I play tested that one and enjoyed it. This is one of the ones that I haven't added to the cards that I have, but I have, I believe, Stormlight and I believe Call to Adventure in the base game. If not the Stormlight, then I have at least the Call to Adventure in there. And I kind of have it all in one box with an extra set of runes in the box. And that's one of the things that makes this game kind of different, is that you cast runes, which are basically two-sided dice. And then you cast a number of runes based on the character that you're developing and how much you've developed. And you're working through a story, and you're trying to score points based on different symbols that you get connected to your character. And I like at the end, you can tell the story of your character based on how your board plays out. There are, let's see, there's a good picture here. So this gives a little picture here that has, you have an age 1, an age 2, and an age 3. And different characters in the game can kind of be in different ages, but I think once somebody moves on to 3, then everybody has to go from 1 to 2, and everybody finishes their story, if I remember correctly. No one's like, it's not like somebody finishes their story and then others are left behind. You always end up finishing it, and you have kind of a dark side and a light side of your character, and so your character can be different, have different personalities depending on how you develop them, but you're building out essentially a storyboard for your character and the adventures that they're going on, which makes it's not inherently built into the game, because you can play the game and just leave out that narrative element altogether, but I think it makes it fun and adds to the story. And it's one of those games that I almost have to be in the mood for to play, but I am drawn back to it, which is why it makes my top 100, because I'm drawn back to it because of the unique storytelling aspect of the game, that it has beautiful art and it has a compelling adventure-like nature to it that I really like. So, and you can play solo, although I've probably played the solo just to try it out, but it's not really one that I tend to enjoy getting to the table as a solo game. I think it's much more fun to play with others, but it's easy to teach and fun to play. That is my number 99, Call to Adventure. Next on the list is a somewhat newer game. Came out in 2022, and this is called Green Team Wins. This is a multiplayer party game. For all intents and purposes, this might be the only party game on my list, but it is one that I kind of wanted to see. I wanted one party game on my list because I have different feelings about different party games. Some I like better than others. Some kind of move. They never get very high on my list, but for now, this is one that I have on there, and I don't know if it'll stick and move a little bit up or end up falling off the list, and I'll put something else on there. I think Codenames has been on my list in the past. I don't know that it's on there this year, but again, it tends to be close to the bottom, so one of them will probably be a runner-up, and one of them will probably actually make the list. This one's really fun. The box that it comes in is really 6 players, but I want to see if I can get an extra set of boards for this game, or just buy another copy of the game, because it really is even more fun if you add more players, and you can kind of make up your own card to flip. But basically everybody gets a dry erase board, a dry erase marker, and you have those 3 different types of cards in the game, so you get 5 from each. You shuffle those 15 cards together, and they're basically a certain type of question. It's either like there's 3 options, you pick one, it's a this or that, or it's a fill in the blank, and it'll have like a word and a blank, or a blank and a word, and everybody fills in what they think that's going to be. And it's called Green Team Wins because everyone has a little square card that has an orange side and a green side. And everybody starts on the orange side, and once everyone is given their answer, you all reveal your answer at the same time, and then you see, is there a popular answer, one that more people than others has picked. And if you're playing with 12 players, there could be an answer that only 2 people pick that answer, but everyone else's answer is unique. So those 2 people are going to be the green team. So if they're on the orange side, they're going to flip to the green side, and they get a point. You just do that for all 15 rounds with each question. If you're on the green team and you have the popular answer, or there might be 2 popular answers that are equally tied, it's friendly wins in that case. And so if you're on the green team and you stay on the green team, you get 2 points. If you're on the orange team and you flip to the green team, you get 1 point. And if you either flip to the orange team or you're staying on the orange team, you get no points. So you just kind of go through the game with the questions, and it's fun because it's like real interesting to see the different answers that people come up with. And there's definitely a strategy, and you're not necessarily putting the answer down that you are in agreement with, although you could play that way. You're kind of like, who's at the table? So if you're playing with, like if I'm playing with my teenagers, then a lot of times we'll try to like think, what would they put? And then we'll gravitate to them because they might put the same answer for things, and then we'll try to align with them. Other times you'll play with players that will actually put their honest answer, what they think, and you get like a mixed bag of seeing who is where. And you could probably even encourage the game to, okay, we want to play a game where everybody answers what they would do, not necessarily, as a way to try to score points. And so there's little different dynamics you can nuance the game with. But really good party game, very easy to teach, very easy to play. You can play really any number of players. It doesn't have to be 3 to 12. It's just, the more players you have, the more you have to kind of think through what is the popular answer. And, sometimes you have some answers that are close enough that you have to do we count these answers as the same, or are they different? But it's a lot of fun. Definitely one that we added to our collection recently because it fits in with a lot of people and works with a lot of people. Even non-gamers can be happy getting this to the table. That is Green Team Wins. I don't think I did it's from 25th Century Games, and looks like one more publisher. And then Nathan Thornton is the designer of this one. And that is my number 98. So, all right, number 97 is a 2012 game produced by Eggerspiel and Thomas Van Ginst, and Wolf Plank are the designers. This is Yedo. It also been re-implemented into a deluxe version later on. This is it's kind of, I think it might have fallen off my list last year and then slid back on this year because it's a good game. I like it. I'll be honest. I've played 2 games. I don't think we finished either one. If I have a detriment, if there was something I took away from this game and I said, this is the downside of this game, it takes a long time to play. And I've played it at 5 players, and I think I played it at 4 players. It just takes a long time. It's fun. It's enjoyable. It's really action selection, and you're trying to accrue points through the action selection mechanic. But you do different things at each action location, and then there's a character, I can't remember what the character's called, but he moves around to the different areas on the board, and there's like a penalty if you happen to be in that area with one of your workers when he is there. So there's a little bit of trying to move around, trying to accrue points, trying to do things to the other players that help you get a little bit ahead. I wouldn't call it a war game, but there's a little bit of espionage-like feel to some of the things you're trying to do. And there's some set collection involved, and maybe a tinge of engine building, but it's not like super complex engine building. But it's a fun game to play, and even between turns, I would say one of the things I do like about it is you are kind of watching what the other players are doing, and it might influence kind of what's my next move going to be. It doesn't have board state changes like Brass Birmingham or something like that, where it's just board state's completely different and I just can't do what I'm trying to do. But it does have enough nuanced strategy that you're kind of trying to figure out what other players do, and might want to think through some changed nuances to each turn that comes up. But older game, but good design and fun to play. I don't know if the upgraded version offers anything different or if it's the same. I only have the original 2012 version of the game, and I've debated whether I want to hang on to it, but it is a fun game to play. It's just low enough on my list and takes long enough that there tend to be other games I try to get to the table way ahead of this one. So if I do end up trading it away one day, that is going to be the reason why. It's not because it's not a good game. It's just because it's so hard to get to the table. And as my gaming, I don't know if career is the right word, but my gaming hobby has developed, I'm much quicker to move games off my shelf that I know aren't going to get played, even if they're absolutely great games. And there are some games that I think are great games, but they're not going to get played at my house. They don't fit the style or strategy, and there are other games that I'm always pushing ahead of them. So anyway, Yedo, good game, takes a while to play. It is a lot of fun, and it does play up to 5 players. And I think it probably is really fun at 5 players. Now it says best at 4 here. I don't know that I'd agree with that. I think 5 players makes it a little bit more fun because it crowds the board a little bit more, and in this game, a little bit more crowded action selection board I think makes for a little tighter game. But there you go. That is my number 97. All right, number 96 is going to be another social deduction game. And again, this is a game that I'm not necessarily going to play a ton. It is not in my wheelhouse as far as my favorite type of games. But if you are a gamer and you like an experience that doesn't feel like a board game, because if I'm honest, Blood on the Clocktower, it borders on not even being a board game and borders on being more of an experience. It's designed by Stephen Medway, published by the Pandemonium Institute. I can't talk today. It does take a while. I think 120 minutes might be on the low side. I don't know how you would play this game in 30 minutes. Maybe with 6 players it's easier or something. I'm not sure. But it's much better with a lot of players. And I know in one of our local game pubs, they host this game twice a week at the pub, maybe 3 times now. And you could just show up, you could just play with a bunch of random people. Usually folks who come tend to like to come on a fairly frequent basis, so you can see a lot of the people on a regular basis that come to play this. And you start the game with a roll, and you're either going to be a townsfolk, or you're going to be a demon, or I think there are minions. Maybe you'll be a minion. And everybody has a sheet based on the scenario that you're playing the game with. And so on that sheet, you're going to have a list of every single role that anybody in the game could be. And if you don't have enough players for every single role to be filled, then you know that there are some roles that are out there that maybe nobody is that role. Usually those roles will be given as fake roles to minions, because even though your minion is an actual minion role, you are going to probably take the guise of one of the fake roles that isn't being used. That way people can't figure you out real fast. And a demon is the same way. And there are usually 4 demons in a given scenario, and no one knows which demon it is, but each demon behaves in different ways and how it kills people. And so as you go through the game, basically you're going to talk. You're going to share information however much you like, and you're going to throw it out there. And sometimes you're going to lie, and sometimes you're going to maybe tell the truth. And there might be, based on your role and your character, each villager has a different sort of role. There are different reasons you may or may not want to share information that is accurate until you know more information from other players. Everybody gathers at some point. The narrator will say, come together, we're going to go night, and then there's an opportunity to vote people off, to say, okay, we want to kill somebody. And you can vote, and if there's enough of a popular vote to kill somebody that is in the game, that person dies. And then everybody goes to sleep, and then there's the demons probably going to kill some people or persons at night. And there's usually some nuance to how those deaths occur. Sometimes people come back to life, sometimes they don't, and there's some weirdness. And so you're trying to figure out, like, and sometimes other characters are killing people. So it's like, did the demon kill somebody? Did other characters kill somebody? How are people dying? In what way? And there are ways of, over the course of the game, figuring out which demon it might be, or you might think it is, and then trying to figure out which player is the demon versus other players, and how the minions are working. So which minions are part of this one, and who's doing what, and then you're trying to, like, socially deduce who is it at the table that is that person. Ideally, the villagers win if the demon and all the minions are killed. The demon and the villagers, or the demon and the minions, win if all the villagers are killed. And so you just kind of go about this process of talking, chatting, and then you have a nighttime and people die a certain way, and then you do that over and over again until one of those 2 win conditions happens. And so it's, I guess 30 minutes is if people get lucky. You could have a win condition in a very short period of time. Like if the villagers were to kill the demon and all the minions in the first round, somehow, like maybe they're not very good at hiding who they are or something like that, then that can happen. This is one of those rare games that I've considered like adding to my collection, even though I know I won't play it, but maybe once every 2 to 3 years, because it is a fun experience, and I would not mind setting up a narrative and creating a group in the house with different friends and stuff, and allowing, and making that something that I could do. It is a lot of work, and it does take some significant effort on the narrator's part to make it happen. But Blood on the Clocktower is a great game. If you've never played it, I'd highly recommend at least trying to experience it once. And then some people are gonna like absolutely hate this game because of the sort of how open it is. But it is well designed, and I can often appreciate even a game that is not my style of game. I can often appreciate how good and how well designed it is, and this is one that like probably top of the line when it comes to social deduction. So that is number 96. Moving on to another game that I think probably is due for a remake at some point, because it has somewhat very Euro-y type of art. That is Concordia, is my number 95. This is designed by Mac Gertz and published by PD Verlag and several other publishers. It's been around since 2013, but is a very good game. European, I'm trying to think of set collections involved. You're gathering resources, you're establishing some areas on the map, so you might call it a little bit of area control. A little bit of a lot of different mechanics, but very pleasing to play. I would argue having an expansion or two makes it even more fun. I don't think I've ever played this without a couple of expansions thrown in, and that does add significantly to the game. Not to say the base wouldn't be fun, it just is, I would say, more fun with a couple of expansions. I would have a hard time telling you which expansions are the better ones to have. I have not played them all. I think I've played with Venus. That was very good. I think I might have played with Salsa, but I can't remember 100%. Everything I played with was a great expansion, and it's just a fun game. I don't believe there was any time in the game where I felt like I was just waiting for it to end. I was always constantly trying to maximize my points and see if I could be the one to pull out ahead in the end. It's really hard to tell who's winning throughout the course of the game. So you're just doing what you're trying to do, and you are, kind of collecting cards that score you points, but you're also trying to gather resources from areas on the board and increase your production. So there might even be a little bit of an engine building element to it. It is a lot of fun. I think my rating here is actually not accurate. I believe my rating is a little higher than the 6.75 I have here. I think that was an old rating, and I haven't updated this one if I'm not mistaken. But it is a game that I think, because of the art being on the older side, I could see them doing something with this that, like they did with Castles of Burgundy a couple of years ago, and doing the special edition version that was a really souped up version. I could totally see that happening with Concordia, because I feel like it is on a similar level of a really great game that could just use a little bit better art to maybe even pieces or components to like ump it up a little bit. But it's not bad. I don't have it in my collection. I've played other people's copies. I've considered the idea of adding it to the collection. I'm just not 100% sure, again, how often it would get played, because I think there are other games that just are going to bump it out a lot of times. In our family, a lot of that, the art is a significant factor for getting my family to play a game, and this one just isn't going to have the art that's going to get them to the table the way other games do. So that is Concordia. I do highly recommend it, but probably only if you're pretty good with traditional Euro games, and the art does not matter. You only care about the mechanics. This one is high and good on mechanics, and maybe a little less so on art and components. Not that the components are terrible, that's just not going to be the upside of this one. All right, moving right along to number 94. Ohanami is my number 94. Why am I not? Can't spell. There we go. 2019 game, and this is designed by Stefan Bendorf and is produced by Pandasaurus Games and several others. Very small box game, probably about yay big. Just it's mainly cards, and you are playing 3 rounds, and each round different types. You're building out you have up to what's called 3 gardens that you're building, and basically each garden is cards that each turn you're going to add a card. You're going to add 2 cards to your garden. In most cases, you're either going to add 2 cards or you're going to be throwing 2 cards away. But throwing cards away is typically not good, because if you're throwing a card away, it means basically you're not scoring any points for any card you're throwing away. But your garden, when you put it on the table, you tend to want to start with numbers that are kind of more in the middle, because as you build out your garden, it's going to be, you can't, once I put a number 100 down, I can't put, if I have a 50 and then I have a 100, I can't put anything between those. I can play things above the 50 that are below 50, or I can play things below the 100 that are above 100, but they all have to go in order, some sequential order in each garden. So you don't have to play 3 gardens. You can do as much as you can in one garden before you start your next, or you can start 3 in a row. There's all kinds of options you can do, but each round, only certain cards are going to score. You have blue, green, pink, and gray. I think those are the 4 colors of card. And they all score differently. Blue, I forget if it's blue or green. I think it's green that scores 3 points per green card per round. So it's each green card you have is going to score 3 points, if I'm not mistaken. Blue cards will score you 4 points per card, and I could be slightly off on the points. So it's been a minute since I played it, but 4 points per card. But they don't score until the second round, and so they're a little bit. You're like hedging your bets, like which do I want to, do I want to get a bunch of green and score them every round, or get those? The grays only score in the last round, and they score 7 points per card. But since they only score in the last round, it's like there's a little bit of a debate there. When do I add my grays? Do I wait to the last round, but then they may be picked over and there's not as many that show up? Because there's a drafting element. You're going to get a certain number of cards in your hand, and you're going to draft 2, and you're going to hand up a round. So everybody kind of sees the cards and drafts them as you go, which is one of the things that makes the game pretty fun and unique every time you play. And then there's the pink cards, which are basically a set collection. It's the number of pink cards you have. And if you have they score a lot of points. So a lot of times the person who has done the best job of collecting the pink cards will often win if they got enough. So once you hit a certain mark, somewhere around the 8 or 9 pink cards, it really starts to pay off, because it's a lot of points. But if everybody collects them evenly and no one gets a lot of pink cards, then they're kind of mitigated, and then it's going to probably fall to the gray cards or something. So there's different ways that you can win the game, and you really kind of have to be mindful of what other people are drafting and putting in their garden, so that you're not just letting them run away with some score, and you're not getting, maybe you're focusing on something, but it's harder to get that, or they're mitigating what you're trying to focus on and maximizing something else. So you got to pay attention to what others are doing. And so it's really very good, very easy game to carry around, to take other places, and not hard to teach. So Ohanami is, I think, my first small box game on here. Green Team Wins could count as a small box game, but that is my number 94. Moving on to 93 is my first solo game on here. Now, I know that technically the rules incorporate a second player or something like that. It says 1 to 4 players. Don't be too fooled by that 1 to 4 players here. It's really a solo game. And they even say it's best at 1. You could play this game with a couple of players from the standpoint of you're collectively making decisions together, and that would be totally okay. I could see that being an enjoyable experience if what you're looking for, is kind of a narrative experience, and that's what Nemo's War offers. Is a narrative experience where you're kind of playing 3,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the game. And it's based on that novel, or 2,000, I guess it's 2,000 Leagues Under the Sea. That's 3,000, 30,000, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, sorry. This is designed by Chris Taylor, and the second edition art is by Ian O'Toole. And it's beautiful art. It's a very well laid out game on the table. It offers several different types of things that you can go after depending on the theme you're picking, where you can hunt for treasure, you can try to destroy ships, you can try to breed uprisings. It's definitely a dice chucker because you're going to roll dice to determine the outcomes of different tests that you're doing. What makes the game interesting is you have crew, you have ship, you have, crew, ship, oh my gosh, I can't remember the different parts. Let's look at some images here. It'll probably have something that will give me an option. And Nemo. Okay, so Nemo, crew, and ship. So I'm looking at these 3 lines here that go across the screen. And whenever you're doing a test, different cards will allow you to leverage or bet certain parts of your crew to mitigate the dice roll. It'll add numbers to your roll to help you get the score you're trying to get. And so you can bet those, and if you roll the dice and you don't get what you were trying to get and you had bet certain things, then you lose those and they move down on the track. Now, if they ever get to the end, you're dead. You've lost the game. There are multiple ways to lose the game, and there's a fairly narrow window way to win the game in obtaining your goal. But as you destroy ships in the sea, then you add them to your tonnage track, and you can sometimes use those to build parts of your ship to improve the Nautilus, which is the name of the submarine that you're essentially traveling with. Each thing you're leveraging, I think the crew and the ship are actually, they decrease over time. The ability for the die roll to actually be helped by betting stuff goes down over time. Starts out real high. Nemo is the opposite. The more he loses, and I guess you could say the more insane he becomes, the more you gain from leveraging his ability. So that's kind of a little nuance there to the game, and it's a fun story. You're basically flipping cards, you're reading the card, and it's like a story element, and then you're making decisions like what do I want to do to pass this test? What do I want to do with this card? Your crew are pieces. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 crew members, I guess it's 6, and they can be used for certain special abilities, but when they're basically like lost. So the number of crew at the end of the game can kind of determine some level of your score. And the score is it's really a pass-fail. You either win or you don't. But it does give you this option of like tracking, like if you won, what was your score if you won? And so you can kind of try to improve your score. I've played it, I think, at normal, just normal standard difficulty twice. I might have won once. No, I played it more than twice, because I think one time I played it like 3 or 4 times in a row. I think I won once. It's pretty hard to win. Like You need some luck for sure, but I always find it fun and enjoyable because the narrative element makes for a different experience each time, and it's an enjoyable, like, almost choose your own adventure book kind of game. So I like that element to it. Great design, pretty nice solo. If I want a kind of a crunchier board game feel with some good decision making and I can't get anybody to the table, this is a good go-to to have that experience. So that is Nemo's War at number 93. All right, number 92 is kind of a 2-for-1. It is Dominant Species. And Dominant Species came out in 2010. Dominant Species Marine came out in 2021. I collectively put these together. I have played Dominant Species. I have Dominant Species Marine, but haven't gotten to the table yet. But they play very similar. There's some nuances to Dominant Species Marine that are a little different than Dominant Species, but they're so close that I just kind of grouped them together into basically this is the same game experience. I don't feel like I need to own both of them. I think I got Dominant Species Marine like either in a trade or like on a discount rack somewhere, and it plays close enough, and maybe I like some of the nuances of that game, maybe even a little better. I think they both have programming, but there's a slight difference in how the programming works out in the game, because you basically pick your actions and then you go through the actions and take the actions. Although Marine, I think you tend to take the actions right away. I've been told that Marine is like, some people don't like Marine, a little more, I would say, I thought I heard it was meaner, but then it actually, this one is a little bit more, the original Dominant Species is a little more area control, in some ways perhaps meaner than Dominant Species Marine. But again, I've read the rules for Marine, but it's been like probably 6 months to 8 months since I read the rules. So both great games, definitely both area control. You're trying to maximize your point with whatever species you're playing. Each species has its own kind of special power ability, and you are kind of trying to play cards or program your species in such a way that you maximize the area you're able to move into and take over other species, and or just eat them or dominate them in some way. Turn order is often based on your species to some degree, and it's fun. It takes a while. 120 to 240 minutes is probably accurate. It's a pretty involved game as you explore the different land territory and spread your species out. There's definitely some crunchy decision making. This is not a good game for somebody that had like lots of AP, because there are a lot of decisions to make. But it's probably one of those games I would probably encourage, play a game, just take actions and learn how different things work, and then get more competitive the more games you play. If you get a person who's trying to think through all the things they could possibly do in a turn, there's just so many actions that you can potentially take down the side of the board that it's like, that would be a nightmare if you have somebody that takes a while to make those decisions. So, but it is a good game. This is one that I could see with more plays moving up my list. Of all the games I've listed so far, most of them are probably kind of at the area they're at. Concordia could move up if they end up coming out with a enhanced version that includes expansions with the base game. I would consider it. Because I think that would be something that would be able to get to the table. Dominant Species is one that I've only played this one once, maybe twice, and Marine I've never played yet. So once I've played Marine and probably gotten 3 or 4 plays of it, I could see it moving up, depending on my experience with those plays. So we'll see, or maybe it drops off. You never know. But yeah, it's a fun game. Definitely has a more aggressive nature element to the game. It's got dinosaurs on it, but I wouldn't say it feels like a dinosaur game. Well, is that dinosaurs? It kind of makes it look like it's almost dinosaur-y, but I don't think the original game feels like that. And Dominant Species Marine kind of looks like that, but I'm not sure it really feels that way. You're really moving cubes around on the board, so I'm sure there's upgraded components somewhere for these things, but kind of looks like cones of Dunshire when you look at the picture here. Wouldn't shock me if that was based off of this kind of this game in particular, because it seems very similar. But anyway, that is my number 92. And last but not least for this video, probably one of the more underrated games, in my opinion, is Founders of Gloomhaven. This one came out in 2018. I think it very quickly just fell off people's radar. It wasn't Gloomhaven, so people kind of hated on it, and there were tons of copies of it around. I think you could probably get a copy of this for like $10 at one point, or very close to it. But this is, in my opinion, a very underrated game. It's rated at 6.6. It's so if people are just looking through BGG and looking at ratings, I think it's going to tend to not be nearly, it's going to fall off the radar. People aren't going to see it. Why do I think it's underrated? It is founded thematically in the Gloomhaven universe. So if you're familiar with the Gloomhaven factions or the types of creatures, characters, races that are in Gloomhaven, then you're going to be familiar with the races that are in Founders, and each race has its own asymmetric ability, and there are something like 8 or 10 different races in the game for you to choose from. So that makes it pretty fun in and of itself, and this is probably, I would say the faction differences are probably similar to something like Gaia Project or something like that, Mystic Veil, not Mystic Veil, sorry, Terra Mystica, where those, I would say that's the level of nuance between what the faction abilities do in Founders of Gloomhaven. I don't know if Isaac Childers was influenced by that, but I do think that it gives you some idea of how those asymmetric abilities can influence the game. Secondly, the card drafting system is, I think, very fun. Now, there's some complexity to it because depending on the type of card you're playing, each one can do different things, but you kind of have your base hand of cards and they do basic actions, and then you can get better upgraded versions of those cards that do actions in a better way, and it's almost a mix of something, because you can have a large group of cards, and I can't remember exactly how the selection, like I feel like you can choose from all the cards you have. Like your whole hand is your whole hand. It's not like you have to go through everything before you get to the next one. And I also feel like more cards you have, the more actions you can potentially take in a round if you have the resources to do the action. So I can't remember all the details of that, and I think you can get rid of cards as well in the game if you determine you don't need them. I remember it feeling a little bit like Rococo, but maybe a little bit like Lacrimosa too. So you don't have the same stable number of cards from beginning to end, but it is very significant which cards you get, and they can do a lot of different things and really influence how your game is played based on the types of cards that you're able to get in the course of the game. So that was one element that is really cool. There's a market element for purchasing those and adding upgrades and adding things to your city, because each player is going to start out in a different section of the board, and you're going to build out from there. And there's this trickle-down point system, which feels complicated at first, but once you understand how it works, it's not too bad. But essentially, you can build things out off of other people's stuff. It just means they're going to trickle some points down, and since typically you kind of want to build off of other people a little bit to help build out your city and build up your point system, there's a lot of nuance to where you're placing things on the board, what things are allowed to connect to other things, how you can get over rivers and past walls. and it's a little bit of complexity to the rules, but I think once somebody knows how the rules work really well, it's not really that hard to teach, and is a much more fun game to play than people give it credit for. So I've gotten a couple of plays of this. I definitely want to play it more. It could move up my list over time. I think it's unlikely it moves down my list much, because it is in my opinion, underrated game. So, yeah, as founders of Gloomhaven, if in this first top 10 list, there was something that I would say, man, this is a game that you should try, and it could be better than you think, this is the one that I would probably say is a really interesting hidden gem. Now, that being said, I'd probably recommend, if you have a friend who has this game and can teach it to you, and you can get the experience, assuming that they're a good teacher, and you can get that experience without having to purchase the game, I'd probably recommend that first, because I hate to tell people to go buy something and they find out they don't like it. But if you have a nice store in your area that has games that end up showing up on a secondary market and they're pretty inexpensive, if you end up finding it for, like, I don't know, $10-15, you can get it for that price. I think it's well worth it. You're gonna get a lot out of this game, especially if you like middle to heavier weight games, listed at 4.12 weight. That's probably about right. Like, this is a fairly heavy game and better than people think. So that's Founders of Gloomhaven. That's my 91. So that is the first of my top 10. But thank you for joining Unraveled Game Thoughts. I appreciate you watching. And until next time, have a great weekend.